In this podcast, Tom Smith joins us, who is the Global Director of Property and Buildings, as he quizzes me on the drivers for strategic value within a smart building.
You're listening to Smart Thinking, a podcast by WSP. I'm Tom Smith, guest host for this episode, where we will delve into the drivers of strategic value as I quiz your usual host, Matt Marson. Matt is the UK and Middle East Head of Smart Buildings at WSP. Matt focuses on designing and delivering digital real estate transformation and human-centered IoT technologies within the built environment. Matt was named as the Institute of Mechanical Engineers Young Visionary in 2016-17 for his work in creating the world's most connected building. He has since spoken around the world on the topic and is an author in the Encyclopedia of Sustainable Technology for the Design of Smart Cities. So Matt, let me kick off with my first question to you. As I travel around the globe meeting our clients, discussions inevitably end up talking about how technology is influencing the design of buildings, precincts and cities. What do you think are the drivers for the digitization of our built environment? And what are the barriers to deployment?
So I think there are 5 main drivers that our clients are caring about. Firstly, it's experience. The idea that you can build it cheap and sell it for expensive, which is a model that property developers are really used to, isn't quite flying with their customers. And they want to see how places can be more curated, particularly through the delivery of some kind of a digital service. The second one is wellness. Given the rise of wearables and how we're much more concerned about proactive health rather than reactive, we want our spaces to be healthier, and smart helps to deliver some of that. Thirdly, it's about sustainability and looking at how we can be kinder to the planet and reduce some of the energy consumption, particularly when we're thinking about cost. Other clients are actually looking at the importance to their brand. The fact that companies such as Deloitte, who's in the Edge in Amsterdam, which is known as one of the world's smartest buildings, it's been really important for them to show how they are, in fact, a digital company themselves. And finally, I think the 5th one would be around productivity and how that you can use technology to remove obstacles to people's days that might otherwise have gotten in the way so they can get on with more work. But the barriers to deploying some of this stuff is firstly that it's really complicated. It's crossing a lot of boundaries and silos that we're used to in the construction industry, and it means that there's a lot of confusion out there. And here at WSP, at least, we're trying to simplify that process for our clients. Then there's the idea that software companies are really good at making software but don't really understand the built environment very well, and vice versa. Built environment companies sometimes struggle with software, and we've got to try and bridge that gap. And finally, I think it's to do with cost and understanding that although the technology does actually come with a high price tag in some cases, you need to consider the full life cycle in the costing and how you might be able to make money out of it or to reduce your costs.
And I suppose linked to that, Matthew, I certainly feel that our clients are very concerned that they're not keeping abreast of these new technologies. I think that's a reflection of your earlier comment about the whole arena of smart being quite complicated and confusing to many clients. So how can we as WSP help our clients future-proof their buildings? Firstly, to embrace these new digital technologies. And I think a second point is actually avoid these future technologies becoming obsolescent.
That's right. And being future ready is difficult. And where I think we're actually being quite successful in some of our designs is considering it as a kit of parts and thinking in terms of systems, not just point solutions. So because you've got a particular problem today doesn't mean you're going to have that problem in the future. And we should think about technology, particularly with the speed at which it gets updated or improves, as something that you can clip in and out of a building in a simple way. In fact, if you think about your smartphone, I can add new functionality to it tomorrow by installing a new app. And if we've got the right physical stuff, as we do in a phone, simply by adding a software addition on top, it means that we're able to unlock new capabilities. And we should start to think of buildings in exactly the same way as our phones. Or perhaps it's investing in something like a platform. If we think of that as digital glue that can start to tie together different services or systems, then we can be much more plug and play and adapt things for the future. So I encourage our clients really to embrace it, have a go at some pilots, something that's really low capital, just to kind of cut your teeth on the experience of it and start to essentially play around. You'll find what works for you in your context, and then you can start to looking at scaling that up.
And I think following on from that, I noticed that, much of our focus as designers and project managers is on the actual delivery of buildings. But how can smart technologies actually improve the overall performance of the buildings, particularly around productivity and outcomes? And I suppose what I'm trying to get at is actually how can we broaden our service to our clients from being in the design and delivery of buildings into the sort of digital asset management phase?
Yeah, our engineers are smart people, but I think sometimes when we're wrapped up in things that are incredibly technical, we lose the human element. So I would like to kind of challenge our engineers a little bit more to think more human-centrically and to be a bit more combinatorial. The fact that you're a specialist in a particular discipline doesn't mean that you can't go talk to the other disciplines, because I bet if you have a chat, you'll find that together you can probably make something that's pretty awesome. I mean, let's take an example. If we want to think about the folks that run our healthcare practice, or even do some of the standards to do with well or fit well, I'd want to get them talking to some of our building services engineers. Imagine if you could take some of the well standard kind of requirements and show that from the machines that the services guys have spec'd that we're actually reducing sick days. So if we could take that data from the building management system and combine it with people's timesheets, we can start to prove that the design elements that our engineers have come up with are making lasting business impact. Or perhaps it's thinking entirely differently about our relationship with a space. We're very good at doing thermal comfort, but we often find that there's a mismatch between the temperatures that people like in a space. So what if actually we start designing buildings such as, the top floor, go if you like it warmer because you're hot stuff, or if you stay on the ground floor, that means you're a cool thing. And just giving people that human touch and being able to choose where they sit means that we can deliver superb engineering services to get that done. And often I think that sometimes if we don't design in a human-centered way, it feels like there's a lot of barriers to getting stuff done. And what we really need to focus on between us is being brilliant at those basics.
What you've just said there resonates with much of my own ethos, because at the end of the day, buildings are for people. And if we can have a sort of human-centric approach to our design, then it's going to not only improve the productivity, but actually enhance the outcomes of those buildings. And it makes our value proposition much more compelling. Going on to my final question, it's clear that you're a smart buildings expert, but I'm particularly interested in how you go around collaboration with technology firms, prop tech startups, and software partners to co-create an ecosystem that's appropriate for our clients' needs.
Well, at WSP, we know buildings, we know cities, we know communities and how to design those pretty well, and we keep abreast of technology. But I think we'd be a little bit arrogant if we thought we knew everything about technology too. And that's why we need an ecosystem of alliances and partners that can help us close that software and engineering gap that I was talking about earlier. Like, there's lots of things that we can learn from them, and they can learn from us too. So for instance, I actually had a software company call me up and say, look, we really want to move into the Internet of Things space because we think that the physical is going to be really important to our software. But I don't feel that I've got the credibility to be able to go design that. Could you teach us more about the built environment, and in return we'll teach you more about software? And that works as a really good partnership. Or perhaps it's actually looking at one of the issues that one of our clients came to us as well with. They were interested in a tool that could help them with issues in their city and what to do about them. So we partnered with a technology company where we provided the expertise on the built environment, and they helped translate those into a really robust tool full of machine learning elements. And then if I think about startups and some of the kind of smaller companies, if we're honest with ourselves, in the future they could be our competition, or perhaps it's the technologies that we'll have to use. So I kind of want to get involved in that now so we can help accelerate them on their journey and to make sure that we're always providing the best value for our clients. So it's a really kind of exciting time with everything that's going on in the prop tech world at the minute.
There's no doubt that digitization is transforming our built environment, and our smart consulting offer will certainly assist our clients with this transformation.
Tom, I've actually got a question for you. On your travels, when you're talking to our clients, what do you think is the kind of biggest worry that they've got about smart and technology?
That's a very good question, Matt. I believe that a lot of clients are quite confused about the rapidly changing landscape around digital solutions, and they're looking for partners that can give them independent and authoritative advice. And linked to that is the fact that there are so many different players in the marketplace, software companies, large technology companies, startups, who are all offering their advice, and it's quite confusing for a client. This reminds me of sustainability. Probably 20 years ago, sustainability was a new concept, and it took quite a while for clients to be able to grasp that and understand the value that sustainability can bring to their buildings and how it can improve the performance of buildings. So I think there's an important role that we have in articulating how technology can actually help our clients deliver super buildings. And those super buildings aren't going to cost a huge amount of money. They're not going to add increased risk to the schedule. So they're really the main issues I have. And I do sense that the more that we can become a trusted advisor in the smart consulting space, the more that we're going to be able to articulate about the whole package of services that we can bring, and actually the contribution we make, not just in the design and the construction phase, but also in the asset management phase and the ongoing performance of that asset over many, many years.
Agreed. One thing that I'm also interested in is, what would your advice be to our engineers to help us get to that place?
I think I'd be saying to our engineers is they have to be much more open to the possibilities that technology brings to buildings. It's not necessarily about the ducts, pipes, wires, columns and beams. It's about how that building performs and how occupants, users, colleagues actually feel the space is actually enhancing not just their well-being, but actually their health, their productivity, and also that in itself gives them a much better feeling about the company they work for. So they're the sort of things that I think are very important. It's important that we open up our mind to the possibilities that technology brings. And I think the other thing is to recognise that actually we have experts within WSP around the smart space that can actually help them. As you alluded to earlier on in this podcast, there's a huge amount of change going on. Technology is advancing at a rapid pace. And I think it can be quite scary for many of our project managers and designers. But with people like yourself, Matt, you can help those engineers, you can help people like me to articulate, to build capacity in our offer for our clients.
I think we're going to have an exciting couple of years. In our next episode, we'll be talking about how property developers can use information as a service as part of a new business model. Joining us from Boulder will be Jay Ratton. I'm Matthew Marson, and thanks for listening. If something in this episode has piqued your interest, then have a chat with us. Email smart@wsp.com.
You've been listening to Smart Thinking, a podcast by WSP. I'm Tom Smith, and thank you for listening.